Inez, I am very happy you're on the podcast, and I'm excited to see where this episode goes. So thanks for coming in.
Oh, okay. All right. Well, okay. Whatever, Let's do it, whatever we're going to do. Yeah.
Okay, so let's get after it. So could you just tell us how you came to Nosara? Like, where are you from originally, and then how did you make it here to Nosara?
Okay. I'm from the city of Dundee in Scotland, which used to be the world centre of the jute industry, a textile town, which has been, the industry was sort of decaying over a long period of time. Our business, family business, was in that industry. And, I deemed it prudent to obtain some sort of way to earn a living outside the jute industry. So I became what in Scotland and Britain is called a chartered accountant. This was good because it gave me the opportunity to pretty well get a job anywhere in the world at quite a decent rate of pay, and at the same time provided the opportunity of some sort of career.
What year was that when you started doing that?
I was apprenticed to my master in 1959, a 5-year apprenticeship, went to university for 1 year to study law and accountancy and odds and ends, and that was it. Oh, like the day after I qualified, I emigrated to Paris, France. And that's what I did. I went to Paris to work for Price Waterhouse, the accounting firm.
It's a huge firm.
Yeah, that's what I did.
I think my dad interviewed with them too. He was an accountant.
I really don't know. I'm not really much into flags and that sort of thing.
What about football or soccer?
No, I'm not interested in these things either.
Okay.
And I positively loathe the Americans in their ball game. You go into a bar and everybody's watching their stupid soccer match, right? That's fine. They're all happy. Then the Americans come in, and because the ball match is just about to come on. So the whole world's got to come to an end, and they insist, and the servile owner of the bar insists that he allows them to watch their ball game. Meanwhile, the yokels are muttering unpleasantly in the far corner, not being allowed to watch their soccer match. Not interested in that sort of thing one little bit. I do like famous American sport, lingerie football.
Oh,
I don't know if you... That is good. That's good. I'm a sporting gentleman when it comes to that sort of thing.
So you're good with that one?
Yeah.
Could they turn that one on in the bar? That one's okay?
Oh, what?
The lingerie football, is that one good?
Yeah, why not? Why not?
Okay.
Oh, yeah. I love sports.
Okay, so you go to Paris, and then somehow or another you went to Hong Kong, because earlier you were telling me you were water skiing in Hong Kong when you hurt your back in 1965.
Yeah, the idea was to go to France and Germany, learn to speak these languages, and learn a little bit more about what the world is all about, and then go back to Dundee into the family business, turn it round, and make a fortune. None of these things happened. After a few years in Paris, the idea of going to Frankfurt didn't seem so terribly attractive. So I went to Asia, Hong Kong. I took a boat from Marseille to Hong Kong. Took 35 days to get there.
Wow, what was that like?
In a steerage class with huge dormitories with a bunch of people. Yeah, what fun. Yeah.
Wow. Okay. So Hong Kong, where'd you go after that?
Hong Kong. Oh yeah, that's when I went back into the family business for a brief and unpleasant and time-wasting period before, realizing there was absolutely no future in it all. My father would say, the industry is decaying. It's been decaying since ever I can remember, but it just stopped decaying, and that was just rotting when it was just finished, all over, party over. So back to France.
Then from France to where?
France, went to England, country where I'd never lived before, and I worked for a British multinational. I was the treasurer of this company. They were very kind, trusting people, and they were very good to me, and they trusted me implicitly. I think, they said, oh, you're a chartered accountant. I said, yeah. Now, you've lived abroad, and you must know about that sort of thing.
So they were impressed.
Yeah. Yeah, they're finished. They went bust. No, they were bought out years after.
Okay.
Yeah. But they were nice people.
All right. So then from Britain to where?
Oh, dear. Okay. Britain wasn't really getting anywhere. And so the idea was actually to go to the States. In the kind of business I was in, there was just New York and London. These were the two world financial centers. Couldn't manage it. So I ended up in the place which was described to me by a cousin of mine as the arsehole of the British Empire, Newfoundland, where there was this large crown corporation which was in the hydroelectric industry.
Okay.
It was, in fact, it was large. It had a higher generating capacity than ICE in Costa Rica, but it wasn't quite as political, but pretty damn political.
How long were you there?
I was there for a few years, I think 3 years or 4 years, I can't remember exactly.
Okay, so
I was chief financial officer of that company.
Well, you have a pretty sound track record already at this time between various travels to the east and over in the west and Britain, France.
I forgot about Belgium. Yeah, I went to Belgium and
what was that like?
They said if you go to Belgium, you'll get married within a year because there's nothing else to do in Belgium. So I went to Belgium and I worked for an American conglomerate called IT&T. It was very large and ran by a very strong-willed individual called Harold Junine. It's extremely well known. And it was big. I mean, they had, just in the telecommunications side in Europe, they had over 200,000 employees. Learned a lot there. Yeah. But from there, I went to England. No, I had another job in Belgium. That was fun. I worked for a privately owned American company, family-owned company called the Menon Company of Morristown, New Jersey, which specialized in male toiletries and health and beauty aids.
Menon's enormous.
And
if it's the same one that owns like Speed Stick and all of those?
Yeah.
Deodorants and whatnot?
It wasn't a particularly big company, but they eventually sold out to Colgate-Palmolive. But anyway, they had discovered this miracle shampoo, which was a tremendous success in the States, and they wanted to replicate the same degree of success in Europe. So they geared up for Europe and signed joint venture agreements with L'Oréal. And anyway, I ended up being their finance director for Europe, and we really screwed up in Europe. We failed to convince the Europeans that mending of split ends was a major priority, and we got royally shafted by a joint venture partner, L'Oréal.
Eek.
And anyway, that was fun. Then went to England with which I told you about, And then I told you about going to Newfoundland.
Yep.
Yeah. Oh my! I was so happy to leave Newfoundland and go to Montreal. Very fine town, very interesting place, and all the crazy stuff we'd learned about linguistic nonsense and complicated government situations in Belgium stood us in good stead in Montreal, which was just getting, at that time, was in the middle of major linguistic spats. And because of this, speaking both French and English, made it easier to get a good job in Montreal at a time where all the English were leaving or being kicked out. So anyway, that was Montreal, and stayed there for, I think 15 years or something like that.
All right, so long run in Montreal.
Yeah, the family married French Canadians, and they're still there and very happy. Good place, Canada. Bit boring, but it's a wonderful place to bring
People
up.
Seem nice.
Yeah, they're very nice. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah. I like it. But the trouble is now, in our situation we're in now, is that, health's not great, and we can't take cold weather anymore. So this means that we can't go to and live in Northern Europe or even Southern Europe, except in the warm months.
So after you left Montreal, where'd you go?
Came here.
Okay, so why did you come to Nosara, and how did you find it?
Well, I'd read something about no taxes and the Switzerland of Central America.
Okay. So there's an article
even
somewhere.
in those days, we were coming up with this fatuous rubbish to describe the place. And then Nadine liked the idea of the birds and the bees and the climate and living in the country that was it. Her job bored her rigid. She's always been a language teacher, international school in Brussels, international school in Montreal, and, so it seemed like a good idea. The kids had gone to university. And so came down on vacation, and we traveled around the place. It was all very nice. We didn't have anything stolen, which is quite amazing because we were here for almost 2 weeks. We saw them empty a communion plate in the church in Palmares. But, apart from that, though, it was all kind of very respectable. And we didn't go to Nosara. Anyway, back to Montreal to square away things. And then I got sent back to Costa Rica to come up with a short list of places where it might be, learn to speak some Spanish and make up a short list of places that might be nice to stay. So I did that. I was supposed to find 3.
And what year was this?
Oh, God, I can't remember. 25 years ago. So I couldn't find 3. I found Atenas was very nice. That was on the list. And then, I was doing Spanish classes in San Jose, and I would take buses everywhere, all over the place. I did a rental car to come all the way to Nosara because I was told that how there was a small community of gringos living there and how it was very special and different. And so I came to Nosara, and when you got off the road at the Bomba, it was like a track. I had to ask about 3 people which was the road and which was the turnoff.
We're talking about the Samara Bomba for people listening, so they understand.
Yeah. And then I picked up a bunch of guys who looked like semi-naked savages with machetes and a pair of pants and nothing much else. And I asked them the way to Nosara, and they giggled madly and sort of pointed, So anyway, eventually I end up in Nosara. Then I go to this bar. I get in this bar, and it's really strange. There's all these grown men, and they're drunk as hell, and they're all weeping and emoting, I think is the word. And it was the day that Beverly Kitson's husband died. And he says, I remember Terry Kennedy says, give me a vodka. And then Angie was there too, going to give him so no, the bottle, So anyway, I thought, this place, I could fit in quite nicely here. This is just the sort of place I had in mind. Angie said, why did you come to Nosara? And she just arrived a few weeks before. And she said, I came here to find myself. And I said, pray, my dear, where did you lose yourself? And of course, she came from the Keys, and God knows what happened there. A lot of people here from the Keys, that was the place talk about Newfoundland. Well, the Keys were the sort of arsehole of the United States of America.
Cheeky has told me some stories from his time in the Keys.
Yeah. Anyway, a lot of them from the Keys, but it was a very different world. There wasn't the color bar, the apartheid which we have today. It's just that there were such very few gringos, so very strange, and there was never really the slightest chance of anybody understanding each other. So they sort of. They all got together and they would do things for each other, and that was just fine. And, anyway, I don't know what to say. Bill Lancaster, right, he had a rough time for many years, kind of giving free glasses of water to just about everybody, selling individual cigarettes one by one, putting up with all sorts of stuff. You know,
he was deep in town too. So most people only think of Marlin Bills where it is today.
Oh, it was very different then.
And it was back in town. So when you showed up, did you go to town right away, or did you even know about guiones or pelada at that time?
There wasn't the kind of tremendous difference. You know, I mean, right now we've got a situation where these guys would be quite happy if we had an electrified fence all the way around Guiones, and you know, the locals would be allowed in with identity cards, providing they got out by the time it got dark, just like bloody Soweto. And I remember I worked in South Africa when they had their system. And anyway, look, you know, no point talking about this.
No, it's all good. So, all right. So you found Nosara, you like it.
Yeah.
You set up, you get land and a home, and this becomes your life. And it's been that way for 25 years now?
Yes, but I haven't really traveled. I've been here all the time, you know. Haven't been, you know, I leave for every few years. Every few years I leave for a week or so. And I don't know how to behave. I don't know how the machines work. I don't know what buttons to press. I have to be helped and advised, you know, and they're good to me because I think I'm old and, you know, oh dear.
So people will watch out for you a little bit if you have some years on you.
Oh, well, they're quite good here, you know.
Or when you're traveling through the airport, because they have like the new machines. I didn't leave for, it was like 3 years. And then at the airport, they had like you swiped your passport and it took your picture. And
but it's worse than that. In Dallas, I think it was, when you come through, you know, if you want to have a meal, they sit you down in front of a computer screen, and you have to be an ace at programming to order your fucking meal. So the result of which I starve. I have to wander around the airport looking surly until I find a place where there's actually some human interaction.
You can ask for something.
Yeah, don't talk to me about U.S. airports. Nadine is going through U.S. airport, and she has her fingerprints taken by a real overachiever. And he says, these are not your fingerprints. And she says, yes, these are my fingerprints. Oh, no, they aren't. And then she gets arrested and put in a holding cage for 3.5 hours, and with a lot of weeping Latin Americans, you know, very, very incredible. And then eventually they call her and they say, well, okay, have a nice day. That's what they say, have a nice day. Now, do you hear? Have a nice day. Because meanwhile, her trip is all fucked up. The people at the other end waiting for her with the young child, you know, completely insensitive.
And they were convinced they weren't her fingerprints.
Oh, yeah, a big problem, you know. And, you know, it's just that they're not very well trained people. On the other hand, it's very easy to be critical, but what else would these people do were they not working for government? They were virtually unemployable. In the old days, we would put them in the army and send them off to kill and be killed by somebody else's army. And that's probably
I was just about to say, that's what you do when we have a lot of wars going on. You ship them off, and that's what happens.
Yeah. Okay, it's not so great in Costa Rica either. I've had some serious debates in banks as to whether my signature was, in fact, my signature. You know, so
I've had that.
One must not be too critical, you know. In fact, ability to accept nonsense is one of the key determinants as to whether you're going to make it here or not.
I'm so glad you said that. I'm looking around. There's no one here, but except at the end, and you heard me say it 100 times. My number one rule for living here is don't make sense of things. If you have to have everything orderly and make sense, you're not going to make it here. Just give up. Mm-hmm. Just give up. If you can understand that 2 + 2 is not 4 and things happen out of order and you're not going to change it, that's the key to being happy here. Yeah. That's what I think.
One of the great inabilities in Costa Rica is the impossibility of grasping the concept of the time value of money. That $1 today is so much better than $10 tomorrow. And, you know, or the other question is of maintenance of things. I now hear that we're going to shut down our new Chinese bridge, the gift from the Chinese, which the Chinese completed. Very nice present from the Chinese. It took us another year to do up the access roads to actually be able to use the bridge. But now it's going to have to be shut down for 2 months while they do very necessary repairs. Otherwise, no immediate danger, but if they're not done, there will be a future danger. So they won't shut it down for the repairs. They will wait until there's a serious danger before they'll do a damn thing.
I get you.
Same with everything.
The Route 27 was that way. It launched and there were still some problems with it, and they had a lot of incidences before they finally really got on top of it and fixed it.
Which one is that? The one
That's
to
the
Limon?
main intersection from, as you're rolling in by Punta Arenas into San Jose.
Yes.
The new stretch of highway.
Oh, the new one, the new road there.
Yes, sir.
Yeah. But it's such a pleasure. There have been some improvements made. There's no doubt about it. I mean, going to San Jose in the old days with the ferry and going up that big hill to Atenas, and half the trucks would go at like 10 miles an hour.
That's right.
I
remember that.
It's very much easier now.
And all my travels down, back and forth, we used to have to do that drive. I remember it very well. You can get behind one truck that, boy, it could really set you back. So let's bounce back over to Guanacaste and where we're at now. So what's the difference between Nosara and the past for let's say your first 15 years here and then just your past 10? What's changed about this place?
Even then, as now, the foreigners living here, when you turned up, they were very, very happy to see you. Why? 2 reasons, mainly, not because of your pretty face and your competence and all-round skills, because they wanted to sell you a lot, right? It's land. They want to sell you land. When you bought your land, they were only half as nice as before, but they were still kind of nice because they maybe got to build a house for you, or sell you a house. Then when you're done out of these 2 things, then they became all surly and nasty and just like people everywhere else. So you were just part of the mob. But I do notice that they are awfully slimy with people who arrive here to get them to fork out money. Anyway.
Yeah. So is that for here or is that tourist towns just in general?
Oh, I'm sure it's the same all over the world. It's just that I only experienced it here. One thing is for sure is that the real estate profession, right, it was pretty damned obvious from the time we arrived that there were horrendous problems concerning title. And that if you were buying real estate anywhere in the Guiones area, you were taking a pretty damn big gamble. Because at that time, okay, let's go back to the beginning. Costa Rica in the old days, nobody wanted to declare ownership of any land because you had to pay taxes on that. So the great big fincas throughout the country, they were tiny little places. Now things have changed terribly much with $1,000 a square inch down on the beach. People are very, very possessive about their land. And at the same time, you had, the surveyors who would produce a plot to show you pretty well what you wanted it to show. There was no attempt made it's not like a jigsaw, that you could put the jigsaw together and the bits would all fit together. No, you had quite a mess. And that was it. And I think it's only now in the last few years that they've solved that problem. The other thing was they were the most tremendous liars. One weekend, I get shown a lot, beautiful lot, and it has a super view, and it's really great. And you see over there, they can't build. They're never allowed to because as a kind of international treaty signed by the Pope, Queen Victoria, and the government of Costa Rica, the United Nations, to say it can never be built on. And that was it. And the real estate person's buddy the following week takes us to this lot which can never be built on, points at the other lot and says, you see that lot over Anyway, exactly the same story, right? So anyway, we thought to ourselves, we really don't have all that much money to lose, so let's go and live in the boonies, So that's what we did. We lived in the boonies. We're crazy, bad decision. We should have just said, what the hell, and just, put all our money into Guionas right on the beach. And we should have done that. We'd have made a fortune, a lot of money, but we would have been miserable as hell, increasingly so over the last few years. So now, instead of $1,000 a square inch, where I live, it's like $2 a square inch. And I would advise anybody who's thinking about coming to Costa Rica not to pay more than $2 a square meter, because you can get to learn about Costa Rica, which you can't do here. And maybe you don't want to learn about Costa Rica. In many ways, it's really pretty unsatisfactory place, but it's okay. It's all right. Did us all right. And, what do you want me to say? Hell.
You're saying enough, man. If you made it 25 years, it must have been an adventure. So you've seen a couple interesting things. How has Nosara town changed?
The town?
Yeah, Nosara town.
You mean, that the Americans, they curl up like the Pueblo.
Yeah.
They say. Okay, so the tourist wants to know where to go to dinner, right? So he asks in his hotel, he asks in the bar down the beach, say, is there anything interesting? I understand there's a native village. And say, yeah, there's the Pueblo. And he said, is there anything you can do there? Can you go and have dinner there? I said, yes, you can. Oh, yes, indeed you can. They say, it's not dangerous in anything, but there have been one or two things happening. Yeah, you can go there. But on the other hand, it's much easier. It's much easier to eat here, look just up the road. And it's very nice. They're very good, And you speak English. You speak English. That's good. You're good if you speak English. You're not if you're not. Dear, oh dear. So anyway, so the tourist goes off. And meanwhile, a phone call goes through, so he gets his 15% off the bill or something. Oh, fuck it all, Anyway, there we are.
So how do you feel about the restaurants in Guiones and Plata?
I don't know. Since I got diabetes, I haven't really been going to many of these places. But even then, they were lamentably overpriced and thoroughly mediocre, most of them. There's a lot of... At least there are restaurants. There didn't used to be. There was just a few Tico places. Casado, people like. We had Casado. Chifrio didn't exist then.
Really?
No, it was a new thing, yeah. But I'm addicted to Gallo Pinto.
Hey, who deserves to claim ownership of that? Because Nicaragua does, and so does Costa Rica.
I don't know.
Who did Gallo Pinto?
There's a story about it. There's a place in San Jose where a guy claims ownership. I don't know it. I don't think I've ever had one. I don't know. I'm not allowed to eat much anyway, Since I got my diabetes, I've lost a ton of weight, and I don't really enjoy my food very much anymore.
And your back's bad, so you can't surf.
Can't do anything. And I've got a disease in which I tend to fall down. I faint. I've got a problem with circulation of blood to the brain. You fall down. Bang. That's not good. Anyway, there we are.
So medical care in Costa Rica, for your life, your experience here, what would you say?
It's absolutely excellent because I can afford to pay to go privately. Not all people can. When we came here first, right, Nadine gets a double pneumonia within a month or two. And we go to the witch doctor, that's what he says, you'd better go to the hospital. So we went to the hospital and they say, you'd better stay here. And then we say, I don't know if she's going to get out. She'd double in a really bad way. They looked after her extremely well. She made friends with all the people in the hospital. The big doctor wanted my daughter's picture and wanted to meet my daughter because girls from Nicoya are just a bunch of money grubber, useless sluts. And so anyway, we still have excellent relationships with them. And the service attention was very good. Mind you, it's all over the place. You never know what's going to happen. There are all sorts of things like you give you a generic medicine, but there is a better one, but you got to buy it yourself and all that sort of thing. But it is fine. I mean, it is a national service. Socialized medicine. Is it better or worse than private medicine? I don't know. I've seen good and bad in all countries. Yeah.
Hey, can I ask you a question on socialism? You've traveled the world. You've seen all different types of places. You've had a very interesting life. Socialist countries, bad, good. Is it a good idea? Is it bad? Do you hate it? Do you love it? What do you think?
Well, I've only worked for one national government-owned country. And I've lived in a country which didn't have any government. It was a colony. There was no government.
Wow.
There was no democracy in voting and anything like that. In fact, it's rather fun because it was extremely successful and it was a model of good government. And right now, as I speak right now, Hong Kong, they're all rioting and they're waving bloody Union Jacks and everything like that and dreaming back to the good old days, which they never knew because they were far too young, about Hong Kong under British rule. Hong Kong had no democracy then. They had major social problems. I remember the Star Ferry riots. I was living there then. And it's just as bad as the nonsense that's going on right now. But there's this endearing, pitiful belief that somehow, under the British jackboot, things were just so lovely in Hong Kong. They're going to get sorted out by the Chinese who have no illusions about how to run a place. You know,
let's bounce.
Oh yeah, we're talking about socialism.
Well, either way.
This brings us in. Socialism generally is an awfully bad system because it always leads to extremism and collapse. Not saying the other lot are much, but anyway, let's talk about Americans. Okay, they are one of the reasons you have to be careful with them is because of the collateral damage from the Americans. They are. It's only happened in the last, as the American sunsets in the American empire, so has the build-up of a kind of factionalism in the United States. They're becoming extremely hateful and polarized and agitated and unhappy and miserable. And it's all about the endless war between the fucktards and the libtards. Right? Now, in Nosara, we are blessed by the great majority of these two fighting factions are the libtard lot, right? And we get them all the time. An awful lot of the Americans who live here, they don't really live here. They live fighting street battles in the United States of America with the fascists, right? And it's incredible, complete bloody obsession. It's absurd. It's not going to do them any good, and it's not going to do me any good because it's affecting the attitude of US versus the rest of the world. They're not only at war with themselves, they're quite happy to give anybody else who gets in their way what for. And, what do you do?
Now, why is that?
I don't know. I think I really don't know. Half of my family's American, and we always had the tremendous love, if you like, and respect for them. But the president, your present president, he is incredibly incompetent, and he's a mess. And I just don't know what to say. He's done a lot of good things for the United States, rolling back the socialist state to a certain extent, and that's excellent. But, oh my.
So what's next for the States?
Next to the States? Well, there's a demographic change taking place there. Old white men rule, have ruled, and continue to rule. But how long is that going to last for? I don't know. I've never ruled, although I'm an old white man. Hey, there's an American insult, they say. when they say something or they're looking for a fight with you, they say, "What do you think? You got a problem with that, old man?" Anyway, okay, what was I saying? We were talking about...
I was asking what's next for the States. What's going to happen? What do you see going down?
There's a change, demographic changes taking place. The non-Anglo-Saxon lot, white Anglo-Saxon, there's a minority and they're gradually decreasing. And it's inevitable that the Americans will lose leftward and become... They love socialism. They've invented they go on about Norway and Sweden and how marvelous it is to have that sort of setup, even though the systems there are just breaking up pretty damn fast and just ending up like the rest of us. No, I think that we're going to have as the importance of America to the world economy gradually erodes, it will become a more socialist state. There's no doubt about it. If only because they don't know socialism. And when they get to know it, then it'll be too late. You have a kind of person, who doesn't think it's her fingerprints, who tend to thrive in a socialist economy.
That's a good point. So what about Costa Rica? What's the future for Costa Rica in your opinion?
Costa Rica, well, they're clever people. In many respects, they've got a basic thread of common sense, which their neighbors don't really have so much of. They're lazy, they're manipulative, they are excellent social skills, and they have, since the last war, the 1948 war, they introduced a whole lot of the public sector. It expanded this enormously. And there was a real need for a lot of these social services. Since then, we have seen that these originally excellent organizations expanded until the time they controlled the entire economy, nearly all the salaried jobs. They are running the place. Private sector is persecuted. The wages are much, much smaller. Half the people in the country can't afford to pay for the cost of the social network and are forced into the informal economy. It's a mess.
So what does that yield? What does that mean?
It means that there's going to be a hell of a problem. They're going to have to unwind these things. There's going to be a lot of difficulties and a lot of unpleasantness. And they lack the courage, I would say, to the determination. Well, oh dear, because most of the people who are going to listen to this are Costa Ricans. Although some of them agree with me, those of them who work for ICE and all, I don't know what the hell to say.
Well, hey, let's talk about EC for a second. How is power and telephones and internet and that type of stuff? Because you were here when it was a lot harder to get a hold of.
There was nothing. There was absolutely nothing. The telephones, there were 6 telephones or something, and you've heard the stories about how difficult it was to make a phone call and everything.
We've heard stories about the Gilded Iguana being the one phone and everyone had a timer and they took their turns.
Yeah, you had to. And if you did it in the village like we did, because it was cheaper, there was a room about this size with a little table in the center and a guy sitting at a little desk at a little table with a pencil and a little notebook. And the chairs all the way around, and you would move from one chair to another as it got closer to your time.
It's like the old bank line.
And if you wanted to make a foreign call, the guy couldn't handle it. This sort of thing. He would have to ask an American to show him how to dial. This sort of thing. And then you'd get through, because you were building a house at that time, and you had to order all the stuff from Nicoya pretty well, from San Jose. And then may I speak to so-and-so? He's not there. And then you could hear him in the next room. And it was frustrating. It tested your patience. Let's put it mildly. And then the water came in. We didn't have telephone for a couple of years. To get the phone in, I would phone up. I would contact San Jose every few months, Say, yeah, no problem. You're on the list. It'll happen. It'll come. Don't worry. It'll come. Then the telephones come in, and then, what? Who told you that? No phone for Don Jaime. I'm Don Jaime, right? Well, how can we work this out? Yeah, so we worked it out in the usual Costa Rican way. I'm not going to describe how, but anyway, I got my phone. It was such fun. I learned how to work Windows, Oh dear. Yeah, it was great.
So,
and no, it was great. Oh yeah, I went to internet and went into the ICE office in Nicoya, and I said, I want internet. And I said, oh, okay. And I said, where do you live? And then he laughed and he said, I said, you don't want to get internet. You don't get internet. You shouldn't have internet. It says here I can. He's got a big poster above him on the wall saying, get internet. And then he said, well, I suppose so. So for many years I had internet, but when you had to update the software, the programs, you couldn't do it because it was too slow. So anyway, but now it's fine. Oh yeah. For years and years, for a good 15 years, internet would be down or not working. And you'd go to see a nice little lady in the IC offices, and she would giggle and say, yeah, it's, and what you're saying is you don't have internet. We don't have it. And we couldn't give a shit. You don't have telephone either? Tough. That's how things are in this country. All you have to do is just wait. We might get round to it. Look, I'll phone up Liberia and see what they'll say. And
so fast forward to today, who's here now?
I put up with appalling internet and telephone over many, many years. And it's only in the last year or so that I now have a blazing fast internet service through, a private guy.
Yeah. So as we fast forward to today, the people who are here now, who do you think has the hardest time living in this area between the different cultures? You have Canadians, Europeans, people from the United States.
The Nicaraguans have the hardest time by far.
Tell us why.
I have no sympathy for the others.
And so why do the Nicaraguans have such a hard time?
They have a hard time because they want to kind of eat. They want to, okay.
They want to have a better life and an existence.
Yeah.
And an opportunity.
Sure. Yeah. That was an easy question. Next
no. So in Nosara town, there's been talk about where the area where it floods the most of relocating those people and giving them a new location.
Yes.
Have you heard any of that?
Oh, all the time. Yeah,
okay.
We've been having conversations like this over the years.
So what are your thoughts on that happening? What would happen? Would it ever happen?
Well, what happened?
Would the people who live in the flood zone be relocated and receive land in a different location that doesn't flood so they don't have to be rescued?
It probably would have been cheaper to take these people, put them up in a hotel in Miami, Florida, and have them there for the rest of their lives rather than doing our government-sponsored second act of the dikes. Yeah, farcical. It was always farcical, but there was one American lady who was much sharper than the rest of us, who knew right away that it was the most tremendous scam. And that was, Hirusa's mother. Phyllis. She's a very clever woman, but she's also she's guilty of a major case of libtardism. Sorry.
So you don't have a whole lot of respect for the left and the right polarizing demographic of the United States.
No, indeed in any country. Today we have a new Prime Minister, Boris Johnson. A fine fellow. I really like him. He makes me laugh, and he's got a great sense of humor, and he's fine. He's fine. He also has the consummate advantage of mastery of what do we call it? The ability to hold equally strongly two conflicting and irreconcilable sets of beliefs.
That's fantastic.
The management of ambiguity. But what I really like about Boris Johnson is that they hate him so much in Scotland that if there's maybe another referendum coming up in the next year or two, Boris will swing the vote in favour of Scottish independence, which is what I really want.
I got you.
But Boris is a good guy, gets my vote.
So he's a step in the right direction.
The other guy, what's his name? I can't remember this name. He's a commodity broker. Farang, something like that. Anyway, but the whole UK thing has been a source of great disappointment to me, because I have always been a fervent believer in a united Europe, increasingly coming together closer and closer with the purpose of economic well-being, but also avoiding the possibility of any war between European countries, ever and ever. But the Europeans don't want that. God knows what the European wants, but the Europeans want, but they're going to get themselves into terrible trouble as a result of the nonsense that's going on throughout these countries. The British are bad, but the French and the Italians are almost as bad. Mm. Maybe we'll get back to the original Benelux. Belgium, Netherlands, and Luxembourg. Anyway, I don't know.
Who knows? Okay, so I want to ask you about the whole imperialism concept. You've traveled all around the world. You've seen places that were empty that are now full. You see what's happening in Costa Rica. Even here in Nosara over the past, I'd say, since about 2013, 2014, things have really taken off here. We have a different style of buyer. We have different demographics coming in. Yeah. A lot's happening right now. So what's your take on all the changes and what Nosara is turning into today? What's your thoughts on that?
What's happening in Nosara is pretty much the same sort of thing as happening all over the world. My wife tells me that in the Philippines and in Vietnam, there's the most incredible tourist development taking place, massive tourist development, with influx, also a massive number of Indian, but mainly Chinese tourists happening all over the place. This is just a very small and special example of what happened to one particular place at one particular period in time. Nothing to say. It's disappointing to somebody like me who was expecting something else. I had no idea that the traditional lifestyle, Guanacasteco lifestyle, would fall apart so fast and so quickly and so thoroughly. And I certainly wouldn't dream of coming to a place like this today.
What would scare you away if you were arriving here now? What would scare you away?
It's because it horses for courses. I mean, 25 years ago, I was a completely different person. My wife was too. We saw everything here that was lovely and delightful and extremely special. And above all, we could learn such a lot. We'd never lived in an equatorial sort of country before. We'd never lived in a developing country before, except for Hong Kong at that time. We'd never lived in a Spanish-speaking country before. We couldn't speak a word of Spanish. It was all new to us. We'd never lived in the country before. Everything was absolutely new, very strange. And this was all very exciting. Oh, just great, go for it, But we traveled around before, we knew other countries, and it made us easier for us to adapt. Problem with a lot of people coming here is they haven't really traveled that much and only know, they're part of the States or they're part of Europe. Europeans are not they don't have so many problems as
why is that?
Well, okay, look, Belgium, for example. Belgium has been invaded by every country in Europe pretty much in the last 100 years. Armies have passed through. They've left their traces. Nothing comes as a surprise to these people. We have 3 official languages. That doesn't mean we like each other or anything like that, but, it doesn't come as a great surprise to us what happens in the world. But Americans, no, they quite rightly, God knows they pay through their nose for it, they expect and they deserve to have an infrastructure and a kind of a lifestyle similar, comparable, or not better than what they had back home, the States.
what are the biggest challenges that Nosara is facing in, say, the next 10, 20 years?
Nosara, what is Nosara? What is this place Nosara? I mean, I haven't yet said, you haven't used the word community, because they go on about community. There is no community in Nosara.
Explain that.
There aren't even communities. You can't even say that, the Ticos are a community. They're not. Most of when Americans came, the people who were pimping and giving the Americans what they want, they came from the Central Valley. They lived here. There was a while when there were like three prices. Price for the gringos, prices for this. Anyway, all right. Okay.
I understand what you're saying. That's interesting that you brought that up.
We're talking about...
So I'm asking what you think the next 10 years holds.
Even within the people in Santa Teresita, they don't really like to go to church in Nosara because they feel that they're looked down upon in Nosara, and that in Nosara, the Indios, this sort of thing, So yeah. My grandfather was an Indian. There's a lot of people are very conscious of it's not color consciousness exactly, but it's very conscious of their background.
Interesting.
You go to a funeral, and the family of one side is sitting outside on one end, family of the other sitting there, they probably don't they don't like each other, they don't talk to each other. Community is very difficult. In our church, we find it very difficult to get people to...
Why is this?
I don't know. In church, people sort of sit as far away from each other as they can.
Which seems like it ought to be the opposite,
I exaggerate, right? I generalize, I lie. So apart from that... But I was in San Jose just a few days ago, and I went into a church there just beside the American Embassy, and there was they're all sitting together, very happy. I don't think the priest had asked them to move forward, sit together. Completely different attitude. I don't know what to say for it. So
was it like that when you got here? Is that cultural? Is that ingrained in the culture, and that's just how it goes?
The problem has been that Americans. A lot of people got very rich. A lot of the local people have gotten very rich. Those who haven't and those who have, there's a resentment, if you like. A lot of the people here find it very difficult to cope with working for the gringos. The girls do better, and the girls have more money. The girls go to restaurants and go to bars and throw their weight around. And that's different, and that too causes a bit of resentment because it's always been the men who ran the place. I'll give you one example of a Tico guy, the very poorest families. Juan de Dios Giron Matarita, Surfo. He came from very, very poor family. He lived on the Montreal territories in a very, very poor, and, hungry, the family. Mm-hmm. And he came to Nosara and he sort of joined the cash economy, if you like, and then he worked for us for a number of years. And all the guy was interested, he did a good job, but all he was interested in was, he was very determined. He was very determined to learn English and learn what it was all about. He left us after, I think it's 4 or 5 years, and went down to the beach. And he's never looked back since. And that's an example. It's a very rare one, but it's the exception proving the rule. Very unusual. Perseverance. I don't know how you even say that in Spanish. Perseverancia. But it's not a word we hear too often in this part of the world.
Let me ask it this way. So the gringo and Tico populace, how do they get along and interact in your experience?
And what one?
Let's just say while you've lived here, how have gringos and Ticos interacted? Like what's come of that?
At the beginning, there was absolutely no problem at all because there's hardly any gringos. And they couldn't really understand each other anyway. I mean, It's still the same. I much prefer talking to Americans than talking to Ticos, because once you've exhausted saprissa and the number of colors you can have in your gallo pinto, there's not all that much to talk about, really, unless you're interested in politics or anything like that. So anyway, so there's that. But again, I've confused.
That's all right. So are things getting worse between the Tico populace and the Gringo populace, or is it just different?
Well, there's always been a very realistic recognition that they were necessary for each other. I would say that the Gringos are coming around to the point of view that they don't really need the Ticos. I would say that. Yeah. Now, I remember once we had a youth group, a church thing, a retiro, and the Mexicans were talking about they asked the kids what they thought about the Gringos. And there were some who hated them, and there were some who loved them. And they talked about it, but they came to a consensus, and their feeling was that the real reason they're here is just to take advantage of us. Right? That doesn't mean to say that they shouldn't be here, but that's the feeling they have.
That's part of the resentment that you were talking about earlier, is especially if Gringos come here and start making money and doing very well financially, and you said some of the Ticos who've done very well financially, that has built resentment inside of that community.
Yeah. Well, again, community, I don't know. Yeah. Yes, community.
All right, so Palata Guiones, is there any difference to you because you live back?
The original plan was to have a huge, super big lot right in Guiones and build a palace. Well, not really. I don't know what our original plan was. But it was just a matter of months before we realized that it was just too much to handle. So we went to Santa Teresita, where we lived happily. We've lived happily ever after. Right? Sorry. Yeah. Did I answer your question?
No, it doesn't matter. It's all good, though.
Yeah.
So you're around here. You're known for your funny comments online. Are you aware of that?
Yeah, but these people laugh very easily. It's very easy to make them laugh.
Well, I think that's a compliment.
It's also very easy to piss them off.
That's very true.
And that makes me laugh.
Okay, so give me an example.
Okay, right. Okay, a good example. This goes back a long time. I think before your time. I don't know. Okay, it's in Section C, that area, down the mouth of the river. And the Gringos are getting everything stolen. And they're really mad, very unhappy about getting everything stolen. So they get together, and it's a good idea to put up big, strong gates at the entrance to Section C. They put big gates at the top and little gates at the bottom. And they have a guard there. And the guard's going to inspect everybody who's coming in and out and making sure that nothing gets stolen anymore. It's problem solved. So I go up there, and I see these big gates. And I see Costa Rica, usurpación del calle público. It's a criminal offense, right? Public damn road. So in high dudgeon, I go off and tell the cacique guys what's happening. And they didn't believe me. They thought that, who the hell's he? What's he up to? Anyway, so yeah, before doing that, I went to see all the people who lived up there. Whose idea was it to put these unfortunate gates up? I talked to a pillar of the community who said, "You're quite right, we made a big mistake. We shouldn't have done it. That's bad." I talked to another pillar of the community who said, "What the fuck? Quite right too. I'll get a lawyer, I'll handle it." But all the other people, they refused to admit having approved it. Right? Then, the following weekend, the gates are welded shut, right, by the people in the village. Then, the weekend after that, they welded the gates open, right? The weekend after that, they utterly flattened the gates and completely destroyed them. They hated me, and I was persona non grata. They hacked my computer. They did all sorts of things to me. I got no free drinks from the Gringos, but I got a few from the Ticos, that's for sure. Since then, the unfortunate memories of that are still they're still in the back of people's mind.
Really?
Yeah, and Arepa.
Sure.
Arepa, he's still. Oh yeah, another story. I wrote a big article about it in the Voice of Nosara, and talking all about William Walker and appealing to patriotism and all that sort of thing, and asking the gringos to apologize and all that sort of stuff. and Arepa read it, and because it was in Spanish as well as English. And he still calls me el escritor, So that was that. That was number one of the pissing people off stakes.
And were you trying to make people angry through the article, or were you just, this is how you felt?
I was concerned that behavior like this is going to cause endless trouble in the future, and it's going to make life impossible for everybody.
Did people listen to you, or no?
No, they didn't take the gates down. Somebody else did.
That's intense.
They took the gates down. They knocked them down. I told you.
No, I got it. I was talking about your story that you wrote, and
they didn't like that one little bit because they, again, they want a community. They want a community. The community consists of like 2 houses with armed guards, and they want to be sealed off. It's simple as that.
Fast forward to today. We still have crime problems. We still have, I would guess, a lot of the same issues.
Yeah.
What are we going to do about that? Can we fix it or no?
No, nothing. Well, okay. The problem is, it's really a question of narcotics, and it's a worldwide problem. The town I come from in Scotland apparently is a kind of famous for its drug addiction problems. Methadone and Valium are the two. They take anything. But a town of 180,000 has got about 3,000 addicts. It's a mess. Costa Rica, Americans, they import it. It all goes to the United States, and the Americans want it. The Americans love it. Americans here want it. They need drugs. Drugs. The drug people, they have more money than the government. They have bigger guns. They have tremendous authority.
They have demand, too. People want the product.
Right. So long as you have a narcotics problem, you're going to have a crime problem. You can't expect people in San Jose, they've had to give up prosecuting drug people. They're out in the street, and the judge who was trying them, I see this in the newspaper today, they've had to police protection and everything like that. They run the place. So long as that happens, nothing's going to be done.
Is there going to be a war on drugs forever, or are people going to change their mind and realize that it's a losing battle? What's your opinion on that?
I don't know about this sort of thing. All the great civilizations in the world, drugs were always a problem. British Empire was based on drugs. The export of opium to China, that sort of thing. Drug addiction has always been a major thing. I get very upset about it because here in Nosara, we have a tremendous problem with drugs. The kids get paid in drugs, and we have, I don't know, many families here that don't have at least one member of the family who's either an alcoholic or a drug addict, often both, and drugs are terrible. They're causing suicide, a lot of suicides among the young people, just a lot of problems. Drugs. Now, every so often I rant and rave about drugs, on internet or something like that, and they like what I say. But then I see other threads, in which are altogether complicit in the drug thing. Down at the beach, most of the businesses, they've got to make sure that their surfers get drugs. They all do it. So long as it happens, you're going to have problems. They have the goddamn nerve to complain about their stuff getting stolen when, drugs are part of it.
If drugs were legalized, would we have the same problem?
I have no idea. I don't know. Apparently the biggest drug of all, the most dangerous, is alcohol. And I drank as much as I could from age 17 right up to a couple of years ago. Not a day went by. So it's not good for you. It's not good for you.
Right, but that's legal.
It's legal. So I suppose I just don't know. I don't know. I mean, could you not check these things out?
Well, in some countries where they've tried it, at first use goes up a bit and then addiction goes down.
Yeah.
A lot of it is in how you treat the addiction. So if people have problems and you just put them in jail, now they become worse members of society. When they come out, they have a harder time getting a job. They have a hard time having a normal life. And a lot of this comes back to the whole war on drugs that the United States started.
Trade follows the flag.
So from my perspective, you mentioned we have significant drug issues here. As long as it's illegal, we're going to be screwed.
Yeah.
We are, because the cartels have more power. They have more position, or they have more power. They have more money. There's a demand for the product. And if there's a demand for the product, you're not going to stop it. It's just not going to stop it.
Yeah.
It's going to keep spinning.
Yeah. I don't know what the answer is. I know that the Catholic Church here is very much against alcohol, very much against it, and very difficult to get them to.
Yeah, but and that's fine that they're against it. Well, guess what?
It's because of the harm it's doing to society. And
that's right.
On the other hand, my experience of the church in Europe, Ireland, has not been the same.
Well, a lot of it's in how you treat the person who has the issue. Unfortunately, just stroking a law and enacting it doesn't guarantee anything. Throwing someone in jail does not fix them. I hope my children and my grandchildren, they look back in time at this whole debacle and things are a lot better for them than it is for us right now. Because as long as we have the war on drugs going on, we're never going to solve our crime issue. It's never going to end.
True.
That's my opinion on that. And the only reason I know that is from all my time on the security committee trying to deal with things. And it's a losing battle.
Yeah, your job has been incredible. You've got to kind of stop these houses getting robbed. And it's awfully difficult because they're all, rented out for weeks at a time and this sort of thing.
Well, the Tiga houses get robbed too. So
everybody
gets robbed.
Yeah. When you're doing your missionary stuff and you're going to people's houses, my wife has done this in Costa. She's even done it in Nicaragua, asking people for money, knocking people's doors, asking for money. You go into their little houses. Each room has a lock on the door. You go into the room, and each drawer or desk has a lock on it, because they steal from each other. They steal from each other inside their houses. They steal from each other in their damn bedrooms.
Why is that?
Because they've got something to steal.
Supply and demand.
I don't know. There's also a kind of, it goes back to the beginning of Costa Rica. When if you had something you didn't need it, somebody else would use it. And, it's still the same, you're not using your son, so may I have it? And then, so you lend them the machete, you would lend them something like that. And then it would go one stage further, that you lend it to them. And then they'd rent it out to their buddies for
Right.
And there was, so there was this never to find a dividing line between communal property and private property.
That's funny you said that. I have a pretty good story that someone told me. They bought some land in 1983. Mm-hmm. They didn't come back until I think it was 2008 or 2009. Mm-hmm. They showed up and someone had built something on the house, and they went to the person who built 3 structures. This is a spot that a lot of us know about in town. Somebody built structures on it, and they went to that person. They're like, hey, this is my land. And this guy's like, no, this is my land. They're like, well, why'd you build houses on what we think is our land? What makes you think this is your land? He's like, well, it's my land because I gave a bulldozer to that guy, and he told me I could have this land. So I built these houses. And they were like, wait, what? And in his mind, he's like, no, he gave me a bulldozer. He said I could have it. I built the houses. Here they are. These are mine.
Yeah.
And the people who actually held the title are just like, do I go after this guy? Or do I go after the guy who gave him the bulldozer, who falsified the whole thing? Like, where do you even begin? And to this day, they're still dealing with that.
Well, where I live, most of the people don't have title. And they certainly don't have building approvals for their houses. Still building. They don't get approvals. They don't do it.
So very little enforcement of the laws that are on the books right now.
Okay. Another problem with foreigners is that there's a bunch of foreigners are positively gleeful. They say there are no laws in Costa Rica. I can do what I damn well want. Then there's another lot, rather solemn. They say, they say, there are laws in Costa Rica, and my lawyer tells me that, And then there's the other lot which says, well, I know there are laws in Costa Rica, but let's talk about it, So there's it's divided up. And the first two categories are in for a bad surprise sooner or later.
Well, hey, we have a lot of stuff going on right now. The new building regulations, and the new zoning talk. What's your take on all that?
Yes. This has been going on, this sort of stuff, I've been conversations for many, many years.
What's your opinion on where it's at now?
Oh, well, I think it's heating up a bit. The Nosara Civic Association, which has been a singularly ineffectual organization since the very beginning, has they're gradually getting a little bit more professional. A lot of it is due to Cookie. Cookie was altogether excellent person, and she should be queen of Nosara and just allowed to run everything pretty well. She and that beardy guy who has the fire brigade.
Oh, Ryan.
They would make a tremendous Victorian Albert setup for Nosara. They would put everything right in double quick time.
You might be onto something.
Yeah, that would be the answer.
So what would his title be? Prime Minister or something?
Well, but I
we
mean,
can use one of your European formats.
Okay, all right. Well, let's talk about the garbage dump. Right.
Okay, let's talk about the dump.
Yeah. Okay. All right. The garbage is beginning to pile up in the project, and it's getting a bit unsightly and kind of rather smelly. Pretty close to Beverly's place. And anyway, so we got to have a new garbage dump. So there's land in the boonies, and they can sort of use it. So they set up this unlined, illegal, no approvals garbage dump, quite the thing. And then they start filling it up with all sorts of poisonous shit over the years. And bigger and bigger and bigger. And that's just fine. And then they start asking for approvals, asking the people from... Anyway, they're all suing each other. The municipality, the Americans, the project people,
You mean the Civic Association?
Nosara Civic Association, and the Adin. They're all pointing the finger at each other. It gets on and worse and worse. And then, meanwhile, the emphasis on Nosara as a pristine, ecological, organic, beautiful, untouched, virgin development goes on. And you have people like all the businesses, Harmony Hotel. Okay, I go in there on my own, it's fine, nice, oh yeah, very, very nice. I go in there with my peon because we're learning about organic agriculture. And by God, they did everything but frisk the guy. They're so suspicious. The difference between the way they handle poor-looking Tico guys and Cheeky, the same thing happened to him just because he was, he was obviously not quite kosher. Not in the Harmony Hotel, somewhere else. But it's quite amazing.
So it's a different world.
Yeah. Anyway, these places, they go on and on about organics, and they have wellness directors and all sorts of nonsense about the blue zone and how you live to be 120 and you eat nothing but good organic vegetables. Complete bullshit. I mean, all the kids are obese, even up in Ohansha. There's a tremendous weight problem among them. They don't have vegetables, don't grow them. They steal them from each other, so they don't grow them anymore. Ooh, it's a mess. But the hypocrisy is blinding. And, okay, so we've got this garbage dump, which is apparently toxic as hell, and is going to cause major problems, eventually, to even the people who have set it up in the first place. Because all they want is the garbage taken away from their house and put 2 miles away. They don't mind what happens to it, not a bit. So anyway, when the shit hits the shit hits the fan, they will be hell to pay. And the people will get sick for a start, and there won't be any more tourism, all right? There'll be a big story about it, Oh dear, oh dear, oh dear. There'd be a whole city of garbage. My wife knows one in outside Manila in the Philippines. The church has a thing there called Smoky Mountain. They live in garbage. Quite amazing. The same thing, it's not going to happen here, but it's going to get pretty bad. No, hypocrisy. They could probably, okay, all right, we're talking about, this will answer your question about the building permits. This sort of thing's been going on. We'll eventually have building permits, and it'll be enacted. It'll be the law of the land, and it'll end up like all the other bloody laws of the land. Open to como vamos a arreglar. The whole thing always ends up, it's a chatty little meeting in the president's office with a ritual removal of the check from the checkbook and the problem being taken care of. That's what happens throughout Latin America. Okay? And it would be folly to imagine that it will be any different here. So let's not get overexcited about how many stories you can have and all that sort of thing, because it's not going to make the slightest bit of difference anyway. Right. Years ago, I started a rumor about they were going to have a hotel on the beach. This was a long, long time ago. It was 20 years ago. Oh, yes. I said, yes, it's going to be the regional headquarters of the International Man-Boy Love Club. Oh, no. They were all, that really...
How'd you start that rumor? Was it just at the bar one day?
I just said it. Oh, I said, yeah. No, I just said, are you sure it isn't Lee? That was enough to start it.
And then off it goes.
Anyway, okay. What were we talking about? Yeah.
I don't know. Your rumor's too funny.
The important thing about the garbage dump. Right. Now, okay, you're not going to like this, what I'm going to say.
Say it, man.
If Blue Spirit, if Harmony Hotel, if the trust fund people, if all the hotels, restaurants, chocolate ceremony specialists, aboga nonsense people, all the operators on Nosara community website were to pay the taxes they should be paying, or I was just talking about the fly-by-nights in the Nosara community website, not talking about Blue Spirit or Harmony Hotel. But if they were to fork out a bit of money, if the real estate brokers would chip in with the 6-figure commission on selling a property or two, within a matter of weeks, you would have a sum of money well in excess of $1 million, 7 figures, which should be enough to keep our cash-strapped president sufficiently happy to move the garbage to where the Nicas live. Me explico.
Now, the biggest problem with everything you just said there is unifying all of those different entities between all of the businesses and the restaurants and the people.
And it's not as though half of them are libtards and the other half are the other things. They're nearly all libtards.
So what do we do?
But the capacity for schism is quite incredible. Even among the libtards, I understand that libtard Pelosi is not getting on very well with the libtard squad members.
So all right. So let's bounce back to the U.S. election coming up. What's going to happen there?
In the U.S.?
Yeah, Trump's going again, and Bernie's coming in. You're good.
Well, is that all right now?
Yeah, we're good.
Well, I don't know, because...
We'll take a guess.
They had trouble with... Okay, it's quite an old democracy, United States, and they've had experience with elections. But I remember once they had trouble with their counting machines. They couldn't get them to work properly.
That was from Florida. That's where I'm from, actually.
And
we take credit for that.
And then they were very upset by, what is it they call the Electoral College? Because They figured that the system was designed to make sure that the minority won the election, which seems to be a sort of a contradiction, doesn't it? It shouldn't be that way. On the other hand, so I really don't know. It's going to be very unpleasant. I don't know what's going to happen. But actually, I've told you in the fullness of time that I firmly believe that the movement is towards the left. And that's...
and then collapse. That's what you said.
It's just that the Republican virtues, stern Republican virtues, which I suppose I'm more in favor of these things than the other lot, but it's not going to sell.
I got you. So did you get the best years out of Nosara while you were here? Because you're shoving off here in January. Is that correct?
Yes.
So did you get the best years of Nosara? Are they happening right now? Or are they in the future?
Well, it all depends what you're into.
Okay,
I mean,
talk us through it.
If you're a yoga person or a surfing person or a drug dealer, they're the best times ever. It was grand. And all for the people who have jobs which, pay quite nicely, and they're happy too. So probably, in terms of absolute numbers, this is the best time Nosara have ever had. But for reactionary elements, like me, complete minority. We are brontosauruses. We don't count in these figures. We're not at all.
If you could give advice to people who live here now, like what would you share?
Well, if they've got a nice business going, or they're very happy, or they're a surfer or a yoga person, something like that, it's still pretty damn good. I'm not saying there aren't better opportunities elsewhere, but it seems to me that it's still pretty damn good. On the other hand, we know very well, you've been through this very yourself, that you know that the real estate cycle can be absolutely brutal, and it would be an awfully good idea for them to sell and rent, if they don't want to get out. On the other hand, if they had it up to here with all the childish nonsense that goes on here, then they just get the hell out.
I get you. If somebody wanted to have an experience similar to yours, as in the early years, the pristine years before the tourist part comes in, where would you suggest that they go?
A person coming in.
Yeah, or if somebody wanted to have an experience like yours, a little more authentic.
Okay,
where would they go now?
Do things which they hadn't done before in every respect: language, culture, geography.
Like if you had to redo it again right now, where would you go? If you went back in time and had to redo it, but with today's society.
I don't know. I've just been spending so much time arguing with my wife as to what we're going to do next. So it's difficult to put yourself in the boots of a younger man.
But that helps a lot of us learn from you and you sharing your thought process on that stuff.
I don't know. One thing is absolutely certain. There's a tremendous number of people who want to get out of the United States, or say they do, just because they're not happy with one of the factions.
Right.
Doesn't mean to say that they're going to be happy here. In fact, one of the factions here, the moment they come here, the first thing they do is they're having little marches on the beach wearing little pink hats and wanting to change the world, wanting to build a socialist tomorrow in the United States. It's incredible. They come all the way here to do it, just so they can live like nasty capitalists in Costa Rica, because they can't afford to do it in the United States, which is why they're upset in the first place.
So why do they do that?
Sorry, I didn't answer your question.
That was better. I liked
Sorry. Okay. So, no, it's quite simple. You just find some place. I mean, it's very, very different.
Where would that be, though? Like, where would you go?
Well, it's very easy to go and live in China, and there's tremendous opportunities there. I would have real problems there because I'm a Roman Catholic, and the emperor hates any belief in a power greater than the emperor. Always has been the case in China. So long as the emperor has the mandate of heaven, then he rules the place.
So it's bad for if you're on the religious side, especially if...
if you just believe it's a threat to the state.
But economically speaking, you're saying it's fine. What about in Latin America? Like, do you know Panama? Do you know Nicaragua? Like, what's your take on all this stuff going around here?
Yeah, I don't know. My wife swore me to secrecy. She says, keep me out of this, she said. Okay, but what she wants... I know a person who would love nothing better than to go to a closed down mining village in the highlands of Bolivia, where you've got a whole bunch of physical wrecks. They've got some terrible lung disease, and they can't throwing up all the time. And with the church, and the church is falling into disuse. The old gods are creeping back up the stairs, which they're burning sacrifices in the steps leading to the church. The priest is mad, senile. Nobody speaks English. In fact, most of them don't even speak Spanish. And the place is a mess. Nobody will go there from, they're left on their own. I know somebody who wants to go there. All right. Okay.
Wow.
Yes.
Wow.
But I feel that I would be left stranded on the wrong side of Lake Titicaca with my nose flute. I don't know. I don't know where we'll end up going, but it's going to be fun. It's so much, except for the health thing, which is a killer, literally. but
outside of that,
it's so much fun to be almost 80 years old and to be in a situation where you really don't know what the future will bring.
I bet it is.
It's fun. Just looking at Paraguay, right? It's a country with an incredibly bizarre and homicidal past, but I do love the idea of a Latin American country where one of the official languages, which is spoken by like almost half of the population, is not a European language, Guarani. I would love to check that out. For example, there's just so much. And the whole of Latin American continent is amazing and interesting. And it has also given me a tremendous affection and interest and respect for the Spanish Empire and the Spanish culture.
It seems like you've learned to deal with all of the challenges with humor, all the corruption and things like that.
Oh yeah, I've bribed so many people, but I don't do it anymore because
back in the day, what did you have to bribe to get done outside of everything? But like, what's something memorable? Any funny ones?
Okay, all right. There's this big lineup, and the police are there. The ones can read and write. The traffic police, and they're stopping They're just systematically shaking down people. Oh dear, this is going to be on record. Anyway. God help us all. Okay, so it's my turn. I couldn't turn around and go away because they'd come at the back as well. Papers, the papers. I didn't have any. No papers at all. And, glad you asked that question, officer. Let me look and see what I have here. And I fumble around my pockets and I take out a small banknote. I said, oh, dear, I seem to have left my papers. Oh, this is all I have, officer, sir. And he looked at me and he says, you don't think I'm going to take money in front of all these people, do you? And I said, I think we probably are. And then I said, okay then. And so we bent down. Really pretended to fix my tire or something. Oh, sorry. Fix my tire or something and, problem solved. That was an example, right?
Oh, yeah.
There was no hot and hairy thing. He probably wouldn't even give me a ticket, but even so.
The legal system?
It's changing, It is really getting very much better. They're now having joint operativos with the police, the local police and the traffic police. And that's good. But the trouble is they always go for the gringos. All they want to do is get money. And if it's the guy's got a motorbike, well, he's going to get his motorbike. He's going to lose his motorbike. Simple as that. So it's very unfair, very unfair.
Like between some of your friends, Bobby and the like, do you have any interesting stories or anecdotes you can share?
Well, I've always tried to keep my distance with the pillars of the establishment down at the beach because, okay, all right, Bobby is a crusader. Her entire life is devoted to improving the quality of life down at the beach, especially with regard to wildlife and trees and things. Trees especially. Any moment in Nosara, in the village, there's at least one person who's been thrown out of the place, kicked out of the place because of popular demand, walking all the way to Guapiles or Sigueres or something like that, where he has to keep quiet for a few years, and at any moment in time, there's somebody from Guapiles or Sigueres walking back here just to start it all over again. No, it's an amazing place.
So that's the circle. It just keeps spinning.
Life cycle.
And then their kids.
Well, what can I say? I'm going to miss this place terribly, that's for sure.
What are you going to miss the most?
Okay. The finca is so beautiful and it's large. Yeah, okay, all right. Back to people wanting to quite come and live here. If you're interested in nature, if you're interested in monkeys, and you're interested in wildlife, why the hell come to Nosara? There's none of it, and it costs you $1 million to buy the size of a surf mat. You can go to lots of countries, even in Costa Rica, and have all these things without having the incredible bullshit that goes on here. I mean, they're asking advanced medical machinery for their monkeys, which ticos don't have. Ticos don't have access to these things. The monkeys do. And they mention this in church. There's been allusion to the ridiculous degrees of, what people think important between some people and other people. All right, anyway, say no more. There are no monkeys in danger of extinction in Nosara. There are monkeys doing their thing in the center of Nicoya, quite the thing. Okay, Auntie gets fried by stepping on the long electrical line, but no, this is just a tourist thing. They just want us as a petting zoo. This place, have cotimundis wandering around the place. They feed them. Because you've got to put on a show for the tourists, and it's got to be at the time when the tourists are up. When I came here first, people would come from all over the world and wander up the river valley for miles and miles, but they'd be up at the crack of dawn to see the wildlife, which is when the wildlife. They were not in idiot convoys of 12 quads going up, none of whom can drive. Dear, oh dear, messing up. No, they don't mess up the river. They haven't been up this year. But they make a mess of this place. They pollute like mad. And, oh yes, a few years ago, one of the quad companies, they offered something. We said, we've got to give something back. What were they going to give back to the local people? Esa gente. They were going to give face masks. Right? So, I mean, the whole thing is grotesque. Right? Okay, next question.
Well, it seems to be how towns have a certain cycle. It's undiscovered, then it gets discovered, and then the money comes in, and then it can go one way or the other. If you look at Tamarindo, Capos, Dominical, and a lot of the other towns, they're very different than what Nosara is right now. And it seems like we've been pretty lucky compared to, say, some of these other towns.
Yes.
Now, do you think our luck's run out, has ticked its last talk, per se, and the main journey's over? Because the new style of birdwatcher is not
anymore. Aren't anymore.
Right. That's what I was getting at. Now it is the quad tour, going up and seeing the view and saying, oh, wow, look at this.
There aren't people like that anymore who are... There's a lack of interest in Costa Rica in general and the Costa Rican countryside in particular. They're not interested. Look, I'm generalizing. I think lots of people are, and it's so easy to take what I say out of context. But generally speaking, most of the people are relatively uninterested.
I know when I first visited in 99, the people coming here were more after a sense of adventure. It was far more, well, it's just very different compared to today. The people who are coming in 2019, your aunts come here, your grandmothers come here, your whole families come here. Going to Costa Rica is not a big adventure anymore. It's very well known. It has a huge reputation around the world. And now Nosara, tiny little Nosara, which just 10 years ago was not what it is today. Now all of a sudden it's at the center of all this activity. It's kind of crazy. I never expected Nosara to take off like it has. This is a surprise to me.
Yeah.
I didn't think it was going to happen.
No.
The access is bad. It's expensive.
Yes.
It's spread out. The town doesn't even really make sense because people go to Guiones and say they went to Nosara. They never went to Nosara. They never went to the Pueblo, as you say. It's just a weird place.
Yeah.
It's just a weird place, which is probably why you were drawn to it in the first place.
Yeah. The countryside was very, very beautiful, but the people were extremely interesting. There were no cars or even motorbikes. People walked. And if you could afford it, you had a horse. And everybody had, horses, whatever, everything. That's what it was all about. Even I learned to ride and use a horse. Oh, dear. The fiestas were quite amazing. They were absolutely superb. Now they're just commercial ventures. Two things happened that made me realize that the writing was on the wall. The first one was when the restaurant, the Villaggio, the Italian restaurant, had a guard. They put a guard in to watch the cars outside. I thought, what? What is he doing there? Is he going to steal things from the car? Right? That was the first nail in the coffin. The second one was at the fiestas, where they had a mechanical bull. I don't know, you put money in a slot or something and the bull would throw you off. I thought, this is it. That's the end of it. This is Zapote. This is the end of the world. And, it fell apart so fast when all that generation died.
So what about the kids who are growing up here now?
This forgotten generation, they are making love to old American women for money. They're giving surf lessons for money. They can get $100 for very little effort. They don't know how to work a machete. Try to find a payon these days. It's practically impossible. And yet in our situation, we shouldn't be seen to be hiring Nicas because even though the local people won't do the work themselves, they sure as hell don't like to see Nicas taking the work away from them, what they wouldn't do. Builder trades workers, they're worn out by the age 40. They can't do it. They work terribly hard under tremendous bad conditions. We've had the colegio for something like 20 years or something like that. I don't know. Can't remember exactly. But it's now possible to, theoretically at any rate, it's possible to go to university from the qualifying from the colegio. Mm-hmm. People have to realize that anybody over a certain age, they don't have any education at all.
Right. And
if you look at the local NCA, the one in the Pueblo, mm-hmm. They're not exactly Nobel Prize winners. Do you know Carolina? She runs a gas station. She's awfully clever. She's a professional and she's high heels and very smart. And she's got her accounting degree and all that sort of stuff. She does a good job. She came from the colegio and I remember when she was just like 2 years old, the mud floor, neither parents were literate, very poor people living way up the river. And she made it. Others do too, in spite of the concerted effort of the Costa Rican educational establishment to make life as difficult as possible for poor people and people from the country. How's that? Okay, I'll tell you a story. Okay, the Beverly's Library, which is one of the most fantastic good things about this place, that and the planting trees on the beach. I think they're the two most marvelous
things. So shout out to the Kitson Library and to Barry Guiones.
Yeah. Okay, all right. Beverly, every year, they have a session by which they get a bunch of well-meaning gringos together and a bunch of ticos who want to learn to speak English. And they closet them together in the library, right? And they get to speak English at the ticos, and the ticos get to, anyway, it's a good thing, right?
Yep.
And anyway, they're advertising this thing on Facebook. And they said, I think you know this lady. She said, it's an awfully good thing because this way we can teach our servants to understand us better. She said that.
That doesn't read very well. That doesn't read very well.
No, it didn't read very well. Because the better it is for English, their English is the better it is for them. And of course, the village gets back and say, why the hell don't you learn to speak Spanish?
Of course.
And she got all defensive because she was of a certain generation that couldn't envisage the fact that these people couldn't really amount to much more than, hewers of wood. And, hewers of wood and drawers of water, right? Anyway, then that's the old mentality to a certain extent. And of course, I underestimate, because you've got a whole new generation growing up, and I can't imagine, but I always being surprised how very well the young people speak English, Just mean to say that they're crazy about the idea. Another dimension to this problem is, my wife feels very strongly about this, is that the knowledge of Spanish is very poor in this country, and it precludes a lot of... if you read Facebook, Jesus, a lot of the Costa Ricans, young people, are not going to get anywhere. Forget about English, just because there's Spanish is so bloody terrible.
That's an interesting
point. They can't express themselves, they can't write, they don't read, And the prevalence of the zombies coming on, young kids always with their little cellular phones. I don't know what's going to happen. I really don't know. Anyway, can't do anything about it. We don't know many young people here who are very anxious to do better for themselves and are not on the way to doing it. Because oh dear, racism. Well, that's not, okay. All right. To the extent, people of, more Indian you are, a lot more likely you are to be socially at the bottom of the heap.
Okay.
It's as simple as that. And very often, there are very good reasons for being at the bottom of the heap. Right? Again, throughout Latin America, it's the same thing. I understand that in Dominican Republic, they have 64 different degrees of negritude. That when they marry, they always want to get like whiter and all that sort of thing.
Wow.
Silly. That's how it is. That having been said, I've been having dinner with people, family dinner. One will call each other, say negro, this sort of thing. It's just a term of endearment. There's no, I've hardly ever seen any class on color and pleasantness in Costa Rica. Once at the big parade in San Jose, the Christmas parade, there were a bunch of people from Limon who were partying in front of other people, and they set up a chant saying, Limonenses en Limon, Hey, they do it in the States too. They say, send her home, they say. The major factor militating in favor of this situation is the fact that so many of the young people from Limon speak pretty damn good English, and especially in the tourism industry, they find it easier to get jobs than a lot of a lot of others. Also, there's a good tradition in this country of people who are professional language speakers not actually knowing how to speak the language, right? So there we are. I had the same thing with my French teacher in Scotland.
All right. So I know you're going to be here for another 6-7 months, and then you're shoving off.
Yeah. What do I dislike?
Like, what are your dislikes of this place? What are you going to be happy to get away from?
I don't like the way an awful lot of the Ticos treat the foreigners. It's so obvious that you're trying to rip them off. That I find kind of offensive. Again, I'll answer your question, but first of all, I've got to tell this little story. When you come here and you meet somebody in the street, you have to look at them and you have to remember them. You have to find out their name, and you have to find out as much as you can about them. They're not going to go away. You cannot cut somebody dead, ignore them, because you cannot insult them or hurt their feelings or don't give them what they feel is due to them, because they're not going away, but they can make you go away. It's not like you're New York or Paris or London, where, you just go through life quite the thing, because they can make life very difficult for you. People can. You're all in this thing together. So that's an important lesson. And I don't like people who don't do that sort of thing, that they just sort of ignore. Ticos can the same too. I mean, they will sort of, sometimes, there's a lot of Ticos who won't speak to Americans. Oh, been here for 20, 25 years. Oh, I'm not talking, no, keep me out of this. Okay, but, it's there's a lot of people who just don't like foreigners. A lot of them. Yeah. Okay, tell you a joke. Right. What would they say? Go back to where you came from, right? When I came here, first of all, I annoyed so many people that they said to me, why don't you go back home to where you came from? So I wiped my tears and I went back home to where I came from. And when I got home, after a couple of weeks, they started saying to me, why don't you go back to where you went to? That's a joke, right? So anyway, that's it.
That's kind of that kind of rings true. That's
so
funny.
You know where you stand in society when you do that.
It's somewhere else.
Yeah, somewhere else. La hierba del último es siempre más verde. The grass on the other side of the fence is always greener.
Mm-hmm. So dislikes mainly just some of the social stuff, some of the racism, some of the behavior patterns. Those are your biggest dislikes.
I've never been able to have big parties with both gringos and ticos because they ignore each other. They just don't speak. They don't speak. There are many, many foreigners living here who have excellent contacts. Some of them are married. Some of them have very deep roots here. But they are generally exception. They're generally exception. So I don't know. I don't know what I was expecting, but it's always another problem. Is very sort of disappointment to me is the inability of our church to reach out to non-Ticos. None of them speak a word of English, and that's disappointing. So instead of, it's a tremendous opportunity for somebody to A, save a soul, B, learn to speak Spanish, and C, find out what's going on. Yeah, go to church, if you don't like the Catholic one, there's 101 little Protestant things going on there, and garages and things like that, So yeah, sure, there's that. Every opportunity to talk to people. But that's the problem. They don't talk to each other. Don't talk to,
What are your 3 favorite restaurants over the years?
Favorite restaurants? I can't think of a place in the world I've been to where it's a gastronomic desert. You're not going to get decent value. Oh, there's a Swiss guy who used to work in the Café de Paris. He had a restaurant one time. He served proper food at a reasonable price. I can't remember his name.
It's where El Local is now. It was, I forgot the name.
He rented it for a little while.
Yep, that was a good run. That was cool.
Oh, dear. I like Gallo Pinto. I'm addicted to that. My 3 favorite restaurants. I haven't been to one of the 3 for years because it's in Santa Cruz. It's an Indian cooperative. And the other one is Soda Betty's, Soda de la Corte in Nicoya, just beside the law courts. Gallo Pinto again. And the other one is Rosaura's here in Nosara. That's good. Sonia's is cheap and cheerful. Not all that cheap and not all that cheerful, but, it's you go there, sometimes. Apart from that, if you just want to be patronized by some American tourist bitch who is playing at being a waitress for a few weeks, there's no need to go to these places. I've never been to the New Gilded Iguana, and I don't intend to. I've never been to the Bodhi tree. I mean, these are sort of monuments to crass materialism of the very worst kind. I'm sorry, but, I don't go to buy things in American-owned businesses unless I know the guys personally. No, make a point of doing that. Having been said, I go to Costco in San Jose, full of shit, really, I suppose. Anyway. What can you do?
Well, actually, I've seen you at Bill's. You got to support Bill. You've been friends with him a long time.
He's a good guy, yeah, right. But he's had it up to here, I think, with like selling cigarettes and individual cigarettes.
He's done. Bill's ready to quit.
He just serves good old American food at good old American prices, and everybody's happy. Buy a steak there, and you can eat it for the rest of the week. They're so big, these portions.
Or he'll crack some good jokes and tell some good stories. He's a good guy.
We're going to his bar in the old days. There was O'Hare lying dead drunk at the entrance to the. Then you'd have to pick your way over O'Hare and to get to your. Oh, there's all sorts of things going on there. All sorts of things.
What's the funniest thing that you've seen happen in a restaurant around here?
Okay, it was at, I can't remember even which bar it was. We're all watching this singing competition, from the United States, Spanish language television from the States. Then on comes Arepa on the US television program singing. At the same time, an earthquake starts. And all these things happening at once just created a absolute confusion.
Wow.
That was pretty funny. Yeah.
It's a pretty amazing story.
Yeah, pretty strange. And funny things happen. Oh, yeah. Yes. Okay, we're all in church. And, sorry. We're all in church, and we sing the creed, the Nicene Creed. And so you're supposed to respond saying, Yo creo. And this guy sings, Yo no creo. Right? And I thought that was funny. And
it is funny.
And then we've had fights. Oh, they at the.
What about in church? What's the funniest? That's one of the funniest churches generally have a lot of good fight stories, believe it or not.
Oh yeah,
there's some good fight stories out of churches.
Yeah, I don't like it. I've been in one or two knife fights, and oh yeah, I can think of something. It was okay. There was a place it changes its name every 6 months. It's currently called Tres Amigos.
Okay.
And that building has enjoyed a conspicuous record of lack of success since it started. It's never come to anything good. And anyway, there were musicians here, American musicians. They were rather good. They were called Faith and Dawn or something like that. I don't know if you remember them. But anyway, we're all in there. And the big row, and one of the musicians picks up the vocalist and throws her at the other musician. Just complete mess in the restaurant. And then somebody fires a gun, and then all the Americans just hit the floor because they know what it's all about. They know all about. Europeans giggle stupidly and just sit around, That was funny. That was the end of it. And then a girl I was with, she got stuck to the barbed wire fence at the airport, and it couldn't take her off. She was all tangled up, and she'd wriggled. That was a confused evening,
Yeah, it sounds pretty hectic.
And then she didn't want anything to do with me, and she escaped. And then she ended up lying on the floor at the Five Corners in the mud. And Gareth Adams rescued her. And there was just so much stuff going on, It's just not like today.
Who's the funniest person in Nosara?
Now?
Or in the past, both.
Oh, I can't really think any one person. It's all the circumstances that I find amusing. Right?
What's some of the most humorous things that you'll remember? Like if you had to write down like a top 10 list.
One of the funniest things I think was, and it only happened a few years ago, when there was an outbreak of dengue fever. Everybody was getting terribly sick. And it's a big deal, So what they did was they picked up all the rubbish and they took it to one place, one central collection point, and they dumped it right outside the health centre, right beside the health centre in Nosara. It's an intergovernmental dispute. Who was responsible for taking the garbage? Meanwhile, all the midgies and everything was having a wonderful old time in this new social centre. Everybody was getting dengue. It was really terrible. And and then they were getting sick. Where did they go? They go to the health centre, 20 yards away from the cause of the dengue in the first place. When they got to the health centre, they would say, well, they would write down all your details, height, weight, all that sort of stuff. And then they would say, yeah, you probably got dengue, but we don't know. You have to go to Nicoya and see what's wrong with you, right? And then they'd go to Nicoya and they'd say, yeah, you got dengue. You have to come back every day. Meanwhile, they've lost their job. They have to pay for their bus. They can't afford the electrolytes. They can't afford all the things you've got, And I thought that was the funniest things in Nosara. Complete fucking ineptitude of the way the country is run. And I derive a sort of perverse joy, if you like, from, I don't know.
The analogous.
Estamos en el reinado de los ineptos.
All right.
Oh dear, they're going to...
So that's probably one of the higher levels of ineptitude that you can remember or can think of.
That's a pretty good example. We've had, the roads. I mean, this is non-stop humor, isn't it? It's just, I don't like the fact that all the kids get sick. Everybody gets sick. Why would anybody come to Nosara? Because it's incredibly polluted. It's more polluted than these towns in China. It's ridiculous.
Do you think they're going to fix the road this time?
No. They never have. They did, well, I can say no, never. But, look.
Probably no.
And the country is awfully short of money, because so long as you have these trade unions, you're going to have, if you have these government empires, you're never going to solve the problem.
One of the things I try to explain to people just coming into the community is we have to solve our problems ourselves for the most part. Costa Rica is probably not going to strike oil or find gold tomorrow, and all of a sudden our security and our roads and our healthcare and our fire trucks and all these things are going to be all funded.
It's going to be a mess for years to come.
Yeah, so my take on Nosara is that the way to fix it is we have to get the new money that's coming in to help us with that. Because we have the same benefits, the same people give, the same people go to the meetings. It's generally, for the most part, pretty much the same people who you and I know.
Well, if anybody, look, we're talking really Americans here, and if anybody can solve this problem, it's the Americans. If you look at the history of the United States, it's been one of tremendous courage and determination in opening up and developing the country. The only way they've been able to do it is by a certain degree of cooperation. They've been working together beautifully, but...
well, I think the U.S., Canadians, Europeans coming in who have money are our solution. I think we need to get that money from them and into the community and get people dialed in, but it's kind of hard to get that going. What are your thoughts? Do you think that can happen?
No.
No? Why is that?
Because Americans, we work very hard. Rich people work very hard. They believe that they've earned their money and they should have it. And even if they don't, they won't admit it. But and they want to come to a place. They see it as a resort. It is advertised as such. People in evening dresses sipping champagne cocktails. Like all the signs up around the place. A nice place to chill out, as they say. And, nice, not the place to get involved in some incredibly dangerous and laborious social experiment, No, they don't see it that way. Not one bit.
What if they live here full time?
They don't live here full time.
That's correct. They do not. But what if the schools keep growing and there's more people who live here full time?
The schools aren't growing. The school is getting less people in. The colegio, less people. I don't know. I don't understand the Del Mar, how good their qualifications are to get into places of further education in a developed world. I just don't know how good they are.
It's improving. So Del Mar, well, it depends on what the child wants to go study. So for some things, it's easier than others. But within a couple of years, they're going to have a pretty decent program. So the good thing about Del Mar is they are getting more and more local kids into their operation, and they deserve a lot of credit for that, because just in the past year, they've almost doubled who gets scholarships, because instead of just doing the very, very poor child, the whole thing, they started splitting it up for partial scholarships for some, they're reaching more people. And Jessica Sheffield, Haley, the whole team, I have a lot of respect for what they're doing, because it's hard, and they truly are getting the local Tico kids are the ones who are teaching the parents how to recycle. Like this is what the Ticos are explaining to me is, hey, when we try to talk to the adults and get them to change their ways, they just kind of stare back at you. It's like, why would I do that? Yeah. And the kids are the ones reaching them.
Well, I thought the American kids were pretty damned impressive. The few I've met, they spoke excellent Spanish, and this was at a public meeting or something. They were very good. As a Tico kid, my concern would be coming out of Del Mar, whether that could have get me into the UCR, or whether it would be considered to be a hindrance or not. I just don't know.
They have an international baccalaureate program.
Yeah.
So they are an IB program. That's not saying it's perfect.
Is it working?
Yeah, and it's getting better. It's getting better. But it is expensive to go there, and not everyone can afford to get into the school. So that's why the scholarship program is so important.
Yeah. Yes.
But it's not expensive to some people. If you're in Manhattan and you want to send your kids to private school, that costs a whole lot more than Del Mar does. But let's say you're from somewhere basic in Florida and the private school. So it's all relative. Perception is, I guess, based on where you're from. So Del Mar is very affordable to some people, but it's also very expensive to others. So only a limited amount of people can go there. And again, that's why I give them mad credit for the scholarship programs. The Waldorf style school that's kicked off has been a great thing for the community, because it gives an option besides Del Mar for a private school, and then the Homeschool Beach Academy, and amongst others, and then the Elimar, which is just kicking off. So the private school trend is growing, and that is happening, and that's what's attracting a lot of these families who are investing. But a lot of the families that are coming in to go to Del Mar for a year or two, they do have money. They can give back. And a lot of people actually do want to give back. They just don't know exactly how or where. And that's also why I dislike social media so very much. A lot of the time, social media points people in the wrong direction, or it spreads rumors incorrectly, or it blocks people from getting involved on things that they actually could make a difference on. I'm saying that from the security front. We lose donations constantly thanks to Nosara's Rant and Rave page, which you're one of the bright spots on that page. But for me, it's a bit of a cancer for this community because of the dissemination of incorrect information. So some of us might be out trying to raise money for a cause and making some progress. Somebody hops on there and types something, and then we lose it. It's happened so many times. So it's I don't know. That's a big reason I started this podcast, actually, was to get the people in and let's just talk to the source. But social media doesn't always help us here.
You have to feel you belong. And there's not one you talk to, American, talking about, who, when you say home to them, it's always the States. It's the States. I mean, I've spent, first 20-something years of my life ripping up my roots, and now I don't have any, really. So
if someone told you to go back home, what is that for you?
To me, it's somebody who I'd like to wait till his back's turned and then hurt him badly, and then it means he doesn't like me. It doesn't mean he wants me to go back home. It just means he doesn't like me.
That's like the dig. That's
right. Go back home. I don't know. Go back home. No, this will always be a holiday place.
Yeah, probably. I am grateful for the new families coming in, though, and I do hope and think that they're the future. And I appreciate you coming in today and talking with me. I appreciate your banner, and a lot of people out there do too. So I'd love to chat with you again before you go.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
where do you think I should go?
That's a good question. I'd love for you to go deeper into Latin America and then report back and tell us what it's like.
Yeah, I don't know where we'll end up.
That being said, maybe a life with a little bit higher level comfort is interesting for you at this point.
I could have talked with more authority had I, as I get older and don't travel, get around so much, I tend to live more and more my life vicariously through Nadine, that I find out what the hell's going on from her. I still have my own spies, of course, but generally speaking, she's what it's all about.
She's your sourcing. Well, maybe she'll come in and say bye. Actually, she won't come in. But before you go, I definitely want to have you back in. And I just want to thank you for coming in and the years of humor. And don't stop before you go. Just you have a very strange ability to be extremely sarcastic, but include the truth and still make a point. And I think that's hilarious, and I appreciate it.
Anyway, what the hell?